The future is what we should be working for. And you've, for example, watched a lot of National Geographic. You've seen Animal Planet. You see how the developed societies invest so much in research. And we here in Africa look at them as crazy white people who spend months in the ocean or in the forest. It's because they are investing in the future. But here we have a time-tested past whose aspects we are losing. So this book is about enabling us to remember the future by seeing how things worked, especially now that the present is not working for us. The present is not really working perfectly, yet there are aspects which are ours. We own them by heritage, and they worked. So we need to remember the future by examining those things which worked in the past. Broadly, culture is a way of life. So, and the way of life in a community or a society or a nation. So we had nations here before colonialism. So the culture which has lingered on is the culture which was the culture of those nations, which in a derogatory, almost abusive sense have been reduced to being called tribes. But they were nations. If you look at the definition of a nation in political science, people sharing a destiny, a language, and heritage, they were nations. They were amalgamated by force by the British colonialists. And you go to Uganda. So obviously culture is dynamic. It has been evolving, and now we are forming a Ugandan culture, which is borrowing from the old nation states which we had, and also taking up that of the new nation state of Uganda, which doesn't have all the characteristics of a nation, but it is a state, a republic. And also the international culture, which you can't not roll back, and which has now possibly, the international aspects have possibly affected us more than the state of Republic of Uganda. So we are really trying to grapple with the old values from the nation states before independence, before colonialism, and the present day, which is very much affected by the international environment. Because people's way of life, which is culture, is very much about how they manage their resources. And the most important resource, one of the most important resources is land. And land defines a territory where a particular community lives. So the first attack on the original culture was the management of land, which was done by the agreement of 1900 between, it's called the Buganda Agreement, but it's really the first constitution of Uganda, because Uganda was built around Buganda. So interestingly, this very week, I think, in the very heavy rain shower of Tuesday night, a tree fell about a kilometer from here, or less than a kilometer, Chambogo University. The tree where that agreement was signed fell down less than a week ago. In 2024, February, was it on 29th? That date which takes 4 years before it comes back. Yes, the great tree fell down where the agreement was signed to create Uganda. So we are now still at the crossroads trying to get a culture which is workable, which works for everybody, or which works for the majority. The matter of the environment is possibly the most crucial challenge facing mankind, not Uganda, but the whole world. And now one of the most repeated phrases is climate change, which has arisen from abuse of the environment. The old nation states had ways of protecting the environment based on clans. As we see in this book, it's very clear how, based on the clans, the environment was protected. But today the environment has been abused so much, leading to global warming because of pollution. Global warming has been caused by the uncontrolled industrial processes and the motor vehicles, which has now led to a state whereby the planet is threatened by the activities of the industrial countries. But the biggest sufferers are those who have not participated much in damaging the atmosphere. That is the poor countries of Africa. So we are so insignificant in political and economic terms that we cannot call upon our old knowledge that protected the environment. It's sad that even people studying environment studies are now taught by people from Europe and America, and the courses are sponsored by the outsiders for people who knew what to do. I would say many good things have happened from outside. Everything, even the current state, is an imposition of the outsiders. We talk of democracy. I don't know if you are very happy with the democracy system we have, where you vote for people and they get out there and they only think about how much they are going to steal from you. We had a workable system, representation at the highest level. My case study is the kingdom of Uganda, which to the highest level, the Lukiko, everybody was represented because of the way they were born. It's your blood grandparent who would represent you at the highest governing council of the country. So your parent can't go there and misrepresent you or act against your interests or work for his stomach against your interests. Can you compare that to your MP today? An MP, compare them to your parent who used to represent you in the king's palace, and an MP who is looking for money, among other things, or who is talking of some political ideology belonging to a party, which party you can quit or join, you know. So the other one, they've had the highest form of representation. So why am I saying this? Because if it is the political system to determine the allocation and sharing of resources, then we've lost quite a bit, because today you just hear all politics about arguing about allocation of the national cake, the so-called national cake. And everywhere there is grumbling. These people are stealing, the other one is taking away from us, the other one is abusing our resources, which would not arise if political representation was based on who you were born, and there was no family was superior to the other in representation. They were all equal because they all reached the king directly through their clan leader. Among the definitions of money, one of them is that it's a store of value. It also represents, on its own, money is just a representation, but it represents the value. To start at the end, the crisis we are facing today in Africa is that the money which people hold does not necessarily represent the value that they contribute to the economy. In a country like Uganda, politics is one of the best paying activities. It's not professions, it's not farming. So there is a mismatch between money and the value. The people controlling more money are not necessarily the the most productive. That is at the end where the problem we have. When we go back to the future, where we should be facing, money or value belonged to the people who got accumulated more value are the ones who are contributing more. Not the quicker ones, not the sharp ones, not the powerful ones, not the mighty, but those who contributed more economic activity. But then the money process, which was brought by the West, by the British, it did not blend fully with the culture. So we ended up with money that is really controlled by the political powers and those who are associated with them. So we have another fundamental problem, is that education used to be informal. You pick it as you grow up in your family, in your neighborhood, in your clan, in your community. Now education was taken to a school structure. And either by omission or deliberately, money is not taught in our schools. Even people who study finance-related disciplines, like accountancy, economics, and so on, they don't know much about money. And yet, money, all our lives, are very much controlled, depend on how we manage money or fail to manage money. But from primary school, or the history and or the chemistry you learn in secondary school, and all these are useful. But the most useful thing, in my view, is to know is that money. With money, you can access medical services, you can access engineering services, you can access entertainment. But if you don't understand money, you grow old and you can no longer do much, and you are there's nothing as terrible as growing old when you don't have money. And in the story of Remembering the Future, we talk, we really have scenarios of how money is not understood, and that's where most people's problems arise from. They are not learning how to manage money. In this country, even financial instruments like treasury bills and bonds, which are possibly the most secure way to invest, are not understood even by the most educated. A man works as an accountant, as a finance manager, and retires when he doesn't even have any stock. He's not holding any treasury stock of this country. It's scandalous that Ugandans abroad, foreigners, rush to buy Ugandan TBs because they pay better. 20-year TBs here give you, after tax, 17% return. Tell me which other business can give you that much. And yet they are absolutely secure. The only investment you can make without fear that it will fail is TBs, treasury bonds and bills. Through the colonial period to 62 years ago, when we got independence, until the mega disruption happened in 1972, when the economic war was declared by Field Marshal Idi Amin, or by then General. And that was what made vulgarized money. It's not the current system or government to blame. The vulgarization of money started in 1972, when it became vogue. You could proudly say that I did not go to school, yet I have money. If I have money, I can do anything. And how do you get the money? Not by value, not by giving value, but by accessing political power or hanging around the people with political power. To date, even even after all the refinement and trying to set things right, you still know that politics is an avenue to get money, to earn money which you have not earned. So money was respected in the past because it represented a value. Today, to a large extent, money represents crime. But also, even those who earn the money by working hard for it do not know how to keep it. You know very well, you see how people start working and one of their ambitions is to get the latest phone, which they will not, the iPhone, which they will not use even to capacity. They may only use about 10% of its capabilities, but they would invest 5 million shillings in an iPhone, which 5 million shillings to date can still buy you an acre of land 100 kilometers from Kampala. And yet with the development of roads, you can even stay 100 kilometers from Kampala and work in Kampala. You don't have to work in Kampala anyway now. You can work online if there is a good internet where you are. So these are things which people should know before they start working, before they start earning their first salary. They should know how to leverage money so that they secure themselves and live well. So money is possibly the most misunderstood and very important items in our lives today. All life is about communication. Yeah. Even plants communicate. When the conditions change, they communicate with those next to them. They are also communal. They even know how to respond and how to open up the pores or to close them, or to reduce the rate of photosynthesis. And communication is being very much affected by the digital era, which means that knowledge should be more easily accessible. And we are having a close merge of science and what you call the arts. In the developed world, you can go for higher studies and combine history with physics. It's quite normal. But we are not really making use of the modern information systems here, full use. That's where we still have that compartment. The scientists are here, pay them more money. The arts people are there, pay them less money. So we have misunderstood the whole thing of communication technology. But the media also has lost it, I can say. I'm happy that I'm possibly one of the last people to work in the media as we know it, because it's dying. I'm talking of what you call the mainstream media, the traditional media. But then its role must not die out. But the new technologies which should serve that role are in the hands of people who are not out to preserve the professionalism of the media. And I think that's a crisis. So today, we cannot name the names, but in Uganda, you know that the people with the biggest following on social media are not necessarily the ones who have useful information to pass on. And those who are trained to pass on useful information, their platforms are dying. And they are not doing enough to save them. So you have, for example, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the BBC are thriving because they have discovered proper finance models and even appeal. You know how the BBC is doing a lot of investigatives. They busted the other fake Nigerian guy, Pester. They have busted people in Uganda just last month, which are not going into details, you're aware of them. That the BBC using very, very, oh yeah, they don't even have to deploy their cameras like you do. They just go and collect what is on all these mounted, what do you call them? CCTVs? On the shops, on the whatever. The Uganda get the footage and then you compile the very powerful documentary. So in Uganda, communication is in trouble. We've started at the end because the people with the training are not the ones using the best tools. The best tools are being used by, which are almost free. They are being used by who's. The who's of the wannabes of the city. So otherwise, communication also goes back, if we are to look to the past to find the future, communication was very useful because it sprang from the top, from the kings, and they used the most, what today we would call rudimentary instruments or equipment, which was drums, horns, and they passed on the message. They very targeted, whether it is danger, you know how to approach it or how to avoid it. Whether it could be instant danger, an invasion by the enemy. It could be a wild animal that has approached the homesteads. It could be climatic, that maybe a new famine is coming. There have been climate changes, but not sustained climate changes we have today. And the leadership could communicate, now you people store the food like this. There was something called Omusiri gwa Kabaka, the Kabaka's garden. So the Kabaka, it does not mean that when at a certain phase, the Kabaka commanded that there should be a garden in every homestead. The Kabaka did not get food or anything at all from that homestead. But the family needed to have hardy crops, If there's would you call it an epidemic, a pest attack, which maybe finishes all the bananas, but you should have the cassava in the ground, which cassava does not go bad. It can be in the ground for 2 years. You should have the yams, which can last for many years, whether the rain has failed or not. So, and all this information would be passed on by what you may consider today rudimentary forms of communication. My people do this so that we are safe. But today, there is instantaneous communication. You can do a WhatsApp. Even now you have WhatsApp conferencing. It doesn't have to be the other interactive tools of Zoom and Google Teams and so on. So communication is so easy and it's not being exploited for the good of the people. Radio Katwe, first of all, is named after Katwe. Katwe, which was the African city, where Magezi Gabaganda, that is local wisdom, science, used to operate. Homemade guns were made in Katwe to fight the British. And the first formal media was established in Katwe. The media for the independence struggle by the likes of Jole Joki Wanuka, if you've heard of him. I think the current Attorney General descends from. There were other rebels based in Katwe. Kareches Kale, who is also, I think, father of the immediate former Inspector General of Police. So Katwe was the center of liberation in Uganda for fighting for Uganda's independence. So, but the British controlled, of course, the the mass media to a big extent. The only radio, and then also the newspapers, either they were for the church or for the colonialists. So the nationalist newspapers were first printed in Katwe. Now, when you got this authoritarian regime, which came in 1971, the military government, that abolished the law, abolished the constitution, and finally they said even they have abolished politics. So communication was not, you couldn't just publish or broadcast. So information for survival started to move by word of mouth. And that's how it was called Radio Katwe. All of that is explained in here. But therefore, you can technically say that Radio Katwe operated by word of mouth, by rumor. And over time, it has moved to the internet. It has no central control, but how it operates is also interesting. And of course, now that takes us back to the media. The professional media has let the non-professional communicators occupy the space. They are not even, the mainstream media is not being listened to, or it's not being read. Even when they announced that the government is about to be overthrown, nobody cared. Someone said that, so if the next day they had followed up with the story and said that the new president is swearing in today, people would have yawned and continued with their business. Maybe that's a tragedy, because that story in the mainstream media was not a concoction. People were being charged in the court martial. There were photos with their peeps. Guys being charged with trying to overthrow the government of Uganda. And it's a very recent matter. And ask the next person you meet on the street if they cared about that. But if it was on social media, which is Radio Katwe, people would have. So maybe Radio Katwe should now, serious people should go on Radio Katwe and put there the right information. My name is Joachim Buwembo. I was a primary school boy when Amin took power in Uganda, and my home was at Kisubi near Entebbe. So there was a major church printing press which was publishing also the oldest newspaper by then, called Muno, and a monthly called Musizi, very powerful. So maybe I didn't have much of a choice, or I didn't know, but I grew up seeing the top journalists of the day in that by then rural area, because that's where the center of printing was. I went to school there at St. Mary's College Kisubi and joined Makerere just as Idi Amin was falling government, Makerere University. After the university, I did a bit of teaching, but started writing commentaries in newspapers. I had studied economics, so I think my commentaries were noticeable. So I was invited by the Weekly Topic, by then a very influential newspaper, to start an apprenticeship on the job. So later on I went for masters in the University of Nairobi. So I started off learning on the job, and after about 3 years I went to do interestingly, after I had become an editor, because there was very little journalism in the country, that's when I went to do real professional studies. And that was in the mid-90s, and until now, I've edited a few newspapers around East Africa, and now I do a few commentaries in the newspapers.